Can you guys hear me? Okay, I can't hear you.
Kate.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I think we're all right, Jose. All right.
Oh, you know what we're gonna do? How do we zoom in on the
Will's wanting to know how we zoom.
how do we zoom in on our image? Oh, it's that one, yeah.
Kate, can you bring up the presentation?
Yeah. Just gonna share my screen.
Okay, are we good? Do we still need to zoom?
I think we're good. You see
All right.
where we are?
Yeah. All right, thanks, Jose. All right, okay.
Thank you. Hey, you just scooch over a little bit.
Steve just sent me an email asking if he can have the Word document for the PAD
Who?
later. Here
Last
we go. Steve, what's his name?
Oh.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Paul.
Good evening.
We've got to review doing all the slides. And so we're gonna go,
23.
I think it's shifted slightly. We're gonna go to 21,
Okay.
and then we'll pick up again and do the vision. For Los Alamos, and you're gonna do the first recommendation so that we don't have to jump weird between Kate and you. So
Mhm.
the first one's update the zoning.
Okay.
And there's the thing about building heights, and then Kate will jump in after that. So here,
67.
69.
What you for?
It's really weird, 'cause being so close to something for like a year, but not even being in a room with someone.
Yeah. Okay, we're recording.
Yeah, just.
We're still early.
Yeah.
So we're gonna give it another good 5 minutes. So if you need to go get a beer or do anything, now's the time. Yeah. Here. We need to.
Here, yeah, right here. I'll look it up.
Yeah, you know, the weird thing about this.
Well, I think we probably do want to give a few minutes here, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
I honestly don't know anymore in terms of the Zoom COVID universe. It's obviously um, changes the process just a tad, but just anyway, that was my thought.
Yeah,
Good.
and you know, if we have a small group, I think we can make this a little more a little less formal and make it more of a dialogue too.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
maybe finish earlier than 7:30, just maybe, so.
I think everyone's a fan of that. Depends on
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah,
People are slowly starting to roll in now if we wait just 5 more minutes or so.
yeah, let's tell everyone we're gonna wait till 5:35 and then we'll get started, so you got 4 minutes, people. All right. It's 5:35, and we would like to get going here. Welcome to the release of the downtown master plans. We just posted them on the website for this project today, so I don't expect that you've all had a chance to fully absorb the master plan. So part of this is to show you where we are on the master plans, and of course, this is really meant to make the best use of your time. And so we welcome more of a dialogue on this. I think we're going to have a pretty familiar group on the meeting tonight. So what we'd like to do is go through White Rock, address those issues, and then go through the town site. So let's just dive right into it, unless Paul or someone from the county has anything to say as a preliminary remark.
I don't. Well, thanks. I think that
Okay.
for the best use of our time, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay, great. All right. So you've probably seen this before, that you're muted, and please use the chat function. I think we're all pretty familiar with Zoom after more than a year of this going on. We're going to use some polling questions tonight, so you probably are familiar with that as well. Are we advancing this?
Okay.
Yeah. So this is our agenda for tonight. And like I said, we're going to go through the recommendations and really have as much time for discussion as you all want. So let's go on. You've seen this. Our team has been working at this now for the better part of a year. So this is really a milestone to get to this point where we have a solid draft of the master plans. Next slide. And you can see from our timeline that we've been working at this for quite some time. We're on the top bar at about week 20 in terms of the schedule. I think we're actually been at it longer than that. And then just as an aside on the code update, we've done our diagnosis and we're working on module 1. So we're well into the code update piece of this as well. And we really want to make sure, though, that the master plan gets plenty of review, and that there's a reasonable acceptance of what the recommendations are in the master plan that can form the basis for some of the decisions that we're going to make on the code update. So go on. We have done quite a bit of public outreach in the last year, despite the pandemic. You can see on our slide here the number of workshops and vision sessions and meetings that we've had. So we feel like we have really gotten good input, and that we've made the best use of technology to disseminate the information that we've generated, and to get feedback from you all on our website and from the surveys. So, and this is an example of what we were doing in our charrette, and our ability to kind of post those comments that people made, and really have kind of an in-process design, a design process that captures what people's comments were, and then we can go back, and we did go back and incorporate what made sense to incorporate into the overall master plan for both White Rock and the town site. So and really, this is something that we just to kind of step back, why are we doing this downtown master plan? A master plan by itself doesn't magically make a downtown better. It doesn't magically make buildings appear, but it really is a way to address local concerns and desires, and using a market-based approach that takes really lessons learned from other places and applies them to these specific town centers. And White Rock is very different from the town site. So we looked at different places for different ideas and different concepts to apply here. And it's not to say that we borrowed them whole cloth, that we really tried to just learn from what has made other places successful and apply those lessons in a way that makes sense for Los Alamos. So polling, I think most of you that are on this call have done this before. We'd like you to go on your web browser to pollev.com and enter DPS planning 295. So I'm going to give you all a minute to do that.
Kate, maybe you can also just put that password into the chat function as well for people so that it's available once we advance slides.
Sure, and just to make a note that this is not correct on the right side with the blue. But if you've done this before, you've entered the DPS design, but it's changed now to DPS planning 295.
Thank you, Kate. Good catch. We'll have to update that.
Yeah, we just had we were doing our testing earlier tonight and realized that we had to change that, so. All right, let's see if people are in. Do the classic New Mexican question, red or green. Enter your results now.
Woo, we had some technical issues with this earlier.
All
so
right.
I'm glad it's
Right.
working for people.
All right. And just, I'm sorry, I neglected to introduce our team. With me in the room is Jessica Lawless. With us on the screen is Kate Meliscus. And then from the county, we have Paul Andrus and Bryce Tennant. And I'm not sure who else is on from the county.
Okay, Kate, you want
All
to go
right,
to the next question?
Moving on. Again, fairly easy question. What's your age range? All right, got some young ones. There we go. Some active adults.
Surprise, the middle age group is
Yeah.
higher for once.
Yeah. All right, great. Moving on.
Oh.
Oh, we already did. Okay. All right.
We got lots of Los Alamos folk or more Los Alamos folk.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. And then have you participated in these meetings before?
Oh,
All
got some
right.
newbies.
Got at least one or two.
One,
meetings.
yeah. Okay, so
All right,
that
great.
was the vision.
So now we'll go into our recommendations on the vision for White Rock. So this is meant to be just kind of a guiding statement, and the idea is that it's broad enough to encompass trends and things that we might not anticipate now, and it's just meant to be a bit of a guidepost going forward. So does this vision, White Rock Town Center, the gateway to Bandelier, is envisioned as a thriving hub with a vibrant mix of residential, retail, and office development at a character and scale appropriate for the surrounding community. With attractive housing, shopping, and public spaces, along with a network of trails and parks, it is a great place for residents to live and visitors to explore.
Okay, you want to go to the next slide for the, yeah, thanks.
So, is this vision appropriate? Simple question. All right, great. All right, off on the right foot tonight.
Yeah,
Excellent. So,
next question.
next question.
Seems to be a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that the pause we're having, but that's just the bandwidth here. So are there any concepts that need to be reflected in the White Rock vision? And this is kind of a more of an open question, but it's really just the vision. So you can you don't feel like you need to say yes, you need to include X, but we just want to make sure that there's not something obvious that we're missing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna take that lack of responses as a no. So moving on. So this is really, in every master plan, you have kind of a key exhibit, and this is the key exhibit for the White Rock Master Plan. And it's meant to provide direction, but not to be exactly prescriptive. So it's trying to strike the right balance between being visionary and showing what the future could be like, but not saying that you have to start at step 1 and go through step 9 here. But it's meant to identify the biggest opportunities that we see and that you have expressed for downtown White Rock. And just to kind of walk you through them, we have a signature. One of the key goals is to change that dynamic of State Road 4. It carries a lot of traffic, especially during commuting hours, but there's that stretch that goes through White Rock that we think could have a different character and it could really benefit the town center for White Rock without compromising the capacity of State Road 4. So 1 and 2 are those enhanced pedestrian crosswalks. I believe that the one that is crossing over Sherwood now is already has been approved and should be implemented here in the next sometime this year. And then enhancing the one at the visitor center, there is an existing crossing there, but enhancing that one to make it just more inviting for people that go to the visitor center to cross the roadway there and explore the town center a little bit. And then 3 is more placemaking opportunities to just make it so that when you're driving through that stretch, it just feels different than the other parts of State Road 4, and you feel like you're in a town center area. A lot of bicycle and pedestrian improvements throughout. So you see that number 4 that is sprinkled on this graphic, and the intent is to create a network. There's already some great paths and great trails, but create more of a network and connect the missing dots on that. 5 is this kind of premier gathering space, really creating a defined space that people will recognize and start to associate with White Rock and make it right there along the Arroyo. And then the Bonneview mixed use corridor, number 6, is really an ambitious goal to reconfigure that street and make it into a more urban town center character with new housing. 7, improvements along the Cañada del Buey Trail. And then 8 is the Longview residential development. So a lot of improvements and reconfiguring Longview to create more residential opportunities there. And then 9 is some targeted infill opportunities along State Road 4 and Rover. And I just like to pause here because this is really a key, it's kind of cutting the chase of the matter and showing the kind of the plan for the future, and just to see if people have other ideas. So our next polling question is going to ask that. So let's go to the polling question. And again, you don't have to feel like you have to add, something if you feel like we've captured that, but is there something that you think that is not in there that should be?
Open-ended questions are always.
All right, nice comment.
Actionable is always good.
And given that we are still, we have a a dedicated group of participants tonight. We are going to leave plenty of time for discussion, so we can come back to this as well. So don't feel like this is your only opportunity. So I'd say let's keep going. We've created some images to kind of express what that could look like. And again, this is not to say that this is what's going to get built on Bonneview, but to express a character that could be part of White Rock going forward. And I will just admit that when I first saw this, I'm like, ooh, that's pretty urban. But it's meant to push the envelope. And but 4 stories is not crazy. And there are a lot of downtowns in Colorado towns, in Durango, and other towns of comparable size that have a downtown that has a little bit of verticality to it, and it feels fine. So if we want to strengthen the character of a place like White Rock, it also means allowing more to happen there. So this is just, again, it's just meant to convey a certain character for the downtown area. And then we have the next one, which is in a similar vein for Longview, and showing what residential could look like along with the pedestrian and bike amenities, street trees, and a level of development that could feel right and could really help boost the number of the housing options in the White Rock Town Center.
Okay, so now we're just gonna spend more than a couple minutes probably, but the next half an hour going over some of the recommendations that are in the draft master plan that are specific to White Rock. So the first one is really all about looking at updating the zoning to really create this desired town center development pattern. And so currently the zoning is a mixture of commercial and multifamily uses. There's not a true kind of mixed use zone that is applied to White Rock. So that's the kind of first big strategy that needs to happen in that area. The zoning should really allow a lot of a variety of uses. So anything from commercial, entertainment, more urban housing uses to happen on one site, which with the zoning as it is today, you can develop a lot of those uses on separate development parcels, but the zoning doesn't currently allow them to happen on one parcel, either through a horizontal design or through a vertical mix in a mixed use building. This draft right now is recommending that development patterns are capped at about 4 stories, which is what was illustrated in the vision graphics that Will just showed. With the addition of height bonuses for public benefits. So some of the items that are recommended in that development framework and some of the recommendations that we will be discussing as we move through this for public open space, for some of the streetscaping, those types of things, we could add height bonuses in if the developer or if a developer creates some public benefit for the community. And then really creating some really specific White Rock specific development standards. So for things like site and building design, parking and landscaping, all of those things we want to kind of tailor for the character that the community wants for this White Rock Town Center. The next one is really to increase and enhance pedestrian-oriented infrastructure. And so like those images again showed in the vision, this idea of really creating this premier kind of walking environment for White Rock within the town center, creating a lot more functionality and safer crossings for the pedestrians. We are recommending that minimum sidewalks go up to 8 feet rather than the existing 6 where feasible, that we really start implementing safer pedestrian crosswalks, particularly along State Route 4. And then this idea of creating a unified streetscape treatment so that all of the internal roadways, Bonnie View, Longview, Rover, Sherwood, that they all kind of get a similar streetscaping scheme in terms of street trees, understory landscaping, and site furnishings. And then, as Will mentioned, and as we showed in the vision, creating this kind of mixed-use pedestrian-oriented corridor along Bonnie View. That's one area where we do feel like it could be successful. So kind of creating some development standards that hopefully achieve some more walkable pedestrian-oriented design, at least along that corridor. And so here's kind of just some of the major pieces on those recommendations. All of the orange lines there are where we're kind of recommending some major pedestrian and bicycle improvements. The blue line there along Bonnie View is kind of that pedestrian mixed use corridor. The two intersections along State Road 4 there at Sherwood and Rover obviously are going to be critical. And then the very top kind of cross section at the top is to look at Bonnie View there. That's the existing condition on the left, and then how we could kind of use placemaking strategies and development standards to begin to create that mixed use corridor, at least along that spine. And then to wrap up kind of the urban form and identity component, there are 4 more kind of major recommendations. The first one is to install gateway features along State Road 4 at the major vehicular intersections, so along Rover and Sherwood. And there's kind of a variety of ways that that could be done, either through creating some interesting paving on the roadway, creating some kind of large monument sign or kind of public art component, and then implementing a branded wayfinding signage system. The wayfinding plan that's been adopted by the county does have some recommendations about kind of gateway signage, but it doesn't really address the more internal network. So we feel like that wayfinding plan really needs to be updated to create more of an internal branded signage system for White Rock, and that system should probably be incorporated in the CIP in terms of funding. Incorporating placemaking strategies throughout the town center, but really along the internal roadways. Again, this is where that streetscape system and kind of the unified items like site furnishings come in. And then this idea of really creating a family-oriented environment. So looking at uses and programming within the zoning that can really kind of cater to the types of activities that families want to see. And then this graphic is just to kind of give you an idea of some of those kind of bigger placemaking elements that we talked about. This idea of creating some kind of large monument. Obviously, you know, it doesn't have to be these exact images, but creating some kind of large vertical piece, either through art or kind of a monument architectural feature that's shown there. This idea of using either pavement or kind of integral concrete colors within the intersections, really enhancing crosswalks. And then this idea of creating memorable places. So, you know, using things like streetlights and kind of interactive fun furnishings to create lasting impressions with people. And then this idea of an event space. We heard throughout this planning process that, you know, Ashley Pond is great, and why not replicate some of that in some kind of a larger centralized gathering space for White Rock. Okay, and so for those of you just joining us, we've had a couple people in, so we're going to go through a polling exercise throughout this presentation. If you go to poll EV on the top there, and text it and put in DPS planning 295, you can follow along with the polling. So we just want to get kind of a general sense if people agree with these recommendations for the urban form and identity elements, or if not. And people seem to be in agreement for White Rock at least today, so that's good. Next question there, Kate. Okay, and so then this one is really looking at kind of ranking what's most important to you. So all of the recommendations are there on the left, and the poll should give you an option to kind of just drag those options along in order to be able to rank them. So you just move the one that you feel like is most important to the top, and then you should be able to shift the remainder around in the order that you feel appropriate is most appropriate. And we'll see if this works for people. If this is too complicated, we'll just move on. Not sure if this one's working,
Yeah,
so
this one
maybe
doesn't seem to
we
be
just move along on to the next question, Kate.
Oh,
Never mind, there it goes. So pedestrian infrastructure is a big one. It seems like gateway signatures are low on the list for most people as of now. And the zoning seems to be pretty high too.
yeah, we'll give you more time.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh.
we will,
Not updated. So
don't worry, there's a lot more polling.
yeah, there's a lot. And just so you all know, so we're gonna have a survey version of this poll also, so we will post that onto the website. By Monday at the latest. We'll try to do our best to get it up tomorrow, but there will be other opportunities if you can't do this poll live on the presentation to do it on the web. So let's go ahead and move on, Kate, to the next one. And so then in terms of the urban form and identity strategies, is there anything that we've missed that you would like us to include? So it could be, maybe we didn't spend enough time on bicycle improvements in the presentation. There is some things in the master plan, but if that's something you want to see more of, that could be something you could wrap in here. Think of anything else that would be.
Monorails.
Oh yeah, you can go real crazy.
Amusement park.
Yeah.
Monorhizomes, understand those elements.
That one is over my head. Apparently we are not Los Alamos Knights. Okay, give people just another minute.
Oh, monorail,
So you
okay.
started a movement.
Maybe
Okay.
that's an aficionado of monorails,
Yeah.
monorhizome, so,
Market
What do you think,
center,
Market Center?
that's a good one.
yeah. Okay,
Okay, so maybe we move, oh, there we go. Route 4 tourist shops, maybe a Dairy Queen.
yeah, and you know, part of, I think the challenge is making it so that you can have businesses that really truly front onto State Road 4. And create more of that kind of frontage along that highway, so.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly what that town green is intended to do, create an anchor and then be able to create retail opportunities around that.
Okay, Kate,
All
let's
right.
go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so then the next piece is all about housing. So there's two kind of major recommendations in the plan as of now for housing. The first is to increase multifamily densities and heights. So like I mentioned earlier, the recommendation for White Rock is really to allow at least 4 stories. So when you look at the master plan draft, there's a table in there about how we got to that max 54 feet. But the idea is really looking at construction standards for multifamily and mixed use developments and kind of creating really implementable building heights that are based on a typical construction practices. So that's where the 54 feet came from. So that's the equivalent of a mixed use building that's 4 stories. And then again, with allowing higher development heights, this idea of really including neighborhood protection standards. So requiring building height step downs and landscape buffers on the periphery of the downtown, or I'm sorry, the town center, where there is already established low density residential. So any single family houses or smaller buildings like duplexes. And then the other big piece is allowing just a greater mix of housing types. So anything from townhouses to multifamily to mixed use developments, and kind of just creating more of an urban kind of housing type within the town center. And then we'll see if this one works again. So this is again just ranking these two recommendations. So is the density and the heights more important, or is the greater mix of housing choice more important? Housing mix. So they're about the
Right.
same.
And they're, you know, they're not mutually exclusive, so.
Okay, let's go on to the next one, Kate.
Nope.
Oh. And then in terms of housing, again, are there any strategies that we've missed that anyone feels like we need to cover in the plan? Housing. Parking for,
Yeah.
paint schemes should be limited or zones. That's always a.
Yeah,
There's-
and that's a
people-
tricky one.
yeah.
We've done that on having design standards. It is a very challenging to regulate that.
And one of the things that we've heard for the downtown on Los Alamos is that the mix of building materials that are currently allowed is fairly limited. So that'll be something we have to keep in mind too. We don't want to create too many limitations.
Yeah, and I don't know, the parking for, not really, just pass them on. Okay.
Let's move on,
All right,
okay?
we'll keep going.
Okay, so the next piece is transportation. So as we saw earlier, pedestrian oriented infrastructure was pretty high on everyone's list. So in the transportation section, we're really all about implementing and enhancing both the pedestrian and the bicycle networks. There's some areas in White Rock where there's gaps in the sidewalk system where they're really not ADA compliant. So just general kind of statements about retrofitting sidewalk environments and bringing them into compliance with ADA, constructing safe bike and ped crossings, especially along State Route 4, and then again this idea of creating pedestrian amenities to really enhance the pedestrian environment and experience within the downtown, and then this idea of updating the bicycle plan to ensure dedicated bike lanes on internal roadways as feasible. So that there's safe bike routes into the town center as well. And then creating convenient transit and vehicular transportation systems. So the big one here is really straightening the alignment of Longview Drive. That was a large concern we heard throughout the public engagement process, and that would really allow some crucial redevelopment to happen along Longview. But generally just kind of improving the condition of all roadways. The paving has some issues. The roadways are just deteriorating, so general upkeep. And then looking at, as the town center really begins to densify, extending potentially the transit service further into evening hours and especially weekends, and enhancing the transit stops themselves. So just creating some more kind of pedestrian friendly enhancements, making sure that they're ADA accessible and safe. And then the idea of improving the parking management strategy in general. So one of the major recommendations that may be controversial here, so we'd like to hear from you on all of this, is the idea of reducing minimum parking standards. really looking at national best practice for these kind of urban mixed use environments and bringing the standards up to what most municipalities do, which is generally some reduction from the parking standards in other areas of the community. Providing some more shared parking credits for compatible uses. There is some of that within the downtown Los Alamos zoning. Those provisions do not apply right now to White Rock, so giving some of those additional benefits to White Rock businesses. And then really looking at creating parking reductions for things, for sites that are close to transit or for kind of desired parking lot enhancements for things like solar parking covers, those types of things. And then bicycle parking. So if we're really kind of enhancing the bicycle network and we're trying to create this shift of people using other modes, then you really need to create some kind of parking requirements for bicycles as well, so that people are encouraged to ride their bikes. And if they do, they have a place to store their bikes as well. So again, do people generally kind of agree with those recommendations for transportation? Seems to be fairly pronouncing yes right now. Next question, Kate.
Give me another step.
Oh, give him a minute. Going too fast. You told me to speed up. No, okay, so if you don't, if you can use the chat function, or do we have time for people to unmute themselves?
I mean, I don't know how much, you know.
We have
More slides.
we have a few. We have
Let's
like
keep
4
going.
more elements. Okay, so if you don't, let us know in the chat what you don't agree with, please, and we'll look at that. Next question, Kate. Next slide. Okay, and then ranking. So again, what do you feel like is the most important recommendation in terms of transportation? Is it ped and bike improvement? Is it transit? Is it parking? Seems to be split. Oh, no, bikes are winning. Pedestrians. Okay, so big push for bike and ped safety, and then other systems are following that.
Great.
Okay, Kate, thanks. Let's move on. Okay, and then for the people that didn't agree with our strategies, here's your chance. Let us know what you don't agree with, what we need to change. What kinds of policies do you want to see?
So David, you're saying that the question up on the screen only allowed one choice?
I think the ranking before that.
Please put the strategies back up.
The ranking before that only allowed one choice.
Oh,
So the strategies. So that's implement safe pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, create convenient transit and vehicular transit. No.
Go ahead and keep reading just so people can answer while you read.
Okay, so bike and ped improvements are the first one, create convenient transit and vehicular systems is the second, and improve the parking management strategy is the third. Okay. Wasn't a picture. No, I don't think there was a picture for transportation.
I think just the list, the ranking of the questions that they showed on the screen.
Oh,
That's what they're referring to.
okay,
So we have a 1, 2, 3 and a 1, 3, 2.
yeah, got it.
All right.
Okay,
Let's-
let's move on, Kate. And again, we'll make the survey
Yeah,
available.
and I know
on
it's
the website.
frustrating at times to answer the survey. So.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of economic vitality, so again, one of the major ones here is going back to the zoning and just kind of creating a more well, just allowing mixed uses environments to happen within the zoning update. And then the other one was to kind of create uses that really look at small businesses. So small business retention and support was a big one that we heard throughout the process. And so allowing uses within the zoning that support small businesses. So things like micro retail, startup spaces, any of those types of things. And then streamlining the development process. So, you know, the comp plan says that downtowns really should be the place where we're attracting density. And so one of the main ways to do that is to allow certain developments within a certain size threshold to be able to go through an administrative approval process rather than having to go to the planning commission. So we realize that this may be slightly controversial. So right now the threshold is anything under 50,000 is our recommendation, or 50 DUs or less. So if the idea is we will have those neighborhood protections in place. So if the development comes in and it's under that size threshold and it complies with all of the other development standards within the town center, including those neighborhood protection standards, they would be allowed to just get administrative approval. So that's one way to kind of spur redevelopment within the downtown. The next piece is really leveraging the MRA that's being proposed for White Rock, creating a TIF district potentially to help fund all of those public improvements we've been talking about. Really looking at ways to kind of help small businesses by creating something like a facade improvement program to kind of look at combating some of the blight that is a big concern with the area. There's also some language in there about potentially creating infrastructure funds to help small businesses with infrastructure stub outs, or potentially even bringing their buildings up to building code compliance through things like fire sprinkler assistance, that type of stuff. And then really looking at strategies to incentivize the redevelopment on vacant lots. So one commonly used practice to do this is a vacant building ordinance that really kind of starts to look at how we manage vacant properties, and potentially could even start to include fees against vacant property owners if their buildings are becoming dilapidated. And then another strategy that kind of gets away from kind of the enforcement standpoint is this idea of updating the zoning. This is a fairly kind of new practice that several cities are starting to implement. And the premise here is, so one thing we've heard is maybe you don't want office on the ground floor of certain downtown districts. And so one thing we could do is to potentially limit certain uses for a certain time. And then if, for example, a building has been vacant for 5+ years, then we could open up a larger range of uses. The idea being that some uses that maybe weren't the first choice might be more desirable down the road than a vacant building. Next slide, Kate. And then developing strategies to keep commercial rents affordable, looking at potentially establishing lease to own or buy your building programs, looking at incentives for small businesses through property tax credits, again, kind of building in uses within the zoning code that naturally just make small business more feasible, like micro retail and startup spaces, even this idea of allowing more mobile types of vending to occur. And that's on there twice. So that's the bottom strategy, is its own line item as well. Next slide, Kate. And then these are just kind of some of those spaces that we're talking about. So that top tier there is all about micro retail and the kind of spaces that you can create by kind of grouping some of those. This idea of startup or kind of incubator spaces. So things like food halls where there's kind of shared kitchen facilities, co-working spaces, and then the image there on the very right is kind of this idea of having more startup, even business spaces where you have those small little cubes for small business owners. And this idea of mobile vending, so allowing food trucks, allowing kiosks, those types of things to happen throughout the town center. Okay, so in terms of economic vitality strategies, do we generally agree with these recommendations, or are we way off base?
We did have a request from Dorothy to move a little bit slower on the poll
On
questions.
polling, all right, we'll give
Okay.
you all some more time. It's hard to know if people are responding when the bar doesn't move. So right now, it seems
Right.
like you're all in agreement.
We don't know if that's one person or 10 people.
Yeah. We'll know after. We'll definitely be able to check once we've concluded the meeting, but we can't tell right now.
So we are recommending that less parking, and it's not to say that a business can't provide more parking.
Yeah.
But to set the minimum lower. And because parking is, it's obviously needed, but it also can really just deaden an area, and it makes it so that kind of compromises the walking environment as well.
Well, and one of the larger ideas too is hopefully the idea is that there will be some sort of a shift in modes, right? So if we increase the transit, if we increase bike facilities and pedestrian movement, the idea is hopefully more people will be living in the center, so they don't necessarily even need to drive, they can just walk everywhere. Or we can have people come by other modes. So again, one of the recommendations was to provide reductions if you're close to a transit stop, for example. So hopefully people will use other modes than just the car.
Right, parking in the street, yeah.
Yeah,
Parking in this,
that is.
on-street parking is a very effective tool, so
Yeah, okay, Kate, so I think people are in consensus that
let's
we're
move on.
good on this one. So again, in terms of ranking, which of these are most important to folks? Is it the zoning? Is it streamlining the development process?
And why don't we remind people of how they rank them here?
Oh, so you should be able to just move the options around in the order that you want. So the very top option is the one that you prefer, and then it goes down in priority after that. So if you feel like allowing uses that support small business, for example, should be number one, you move it all the way to the top of the list and then go down in order of priority after that. And this one always takes a while just because
It's a lot,
shuffling around.
a lot of options too.
Yeah. Yeah, this is by far the category that has the most strategies, so. Okay, so rents being affordable is a big one. Vacant properties.
Leverage the MRA. Nothing moving, how do you do it?
If you're on the phone, you should just be able to drag the bars around, and I think on the computer, it's the same. Kate, do you correct me if I'm wrong there, do you know?
I think that's right. You take the mouse and move it around.
Just
but
drag it, yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, okay, so if you're on your phone, you'll click the bar and then it'll bring up an arrow and you can just move the arrows up and down to adjust where you want it to be. Give people another minute or so on that. On your computer. So you should, with the computer, it should be the same. You should just be able to drag the bar where you need it. But again, if this isn't working for people, I apologize. We will create a web version of this survey that we will post on the website for people to be able to respond that way as well. So vacant properties and rents seems to be high on the list.
Great.
It looks like on the computer, once you click on the option, you have arrows that pop up. and
Okay,
then
so
it
it's the
goes
same
up
as
and
the
down.
phone. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's move on. We've got 3 more big categories in 5 minutes. So let's try to get through these quickly.
And I think if we can, maybe we skip
Skip
over
some
some
of
of the
the
survey
questions.
questions, I think,
Okay.
you know.
So if
Can
you
we-
have other thoughts on economic vitality, either put them in the chat or we'll, like I said, make this available on the website and you can.
Yes, they are all
Yes.
important.
All right, okay, so let's skip this one and people can either put it in the chat or circle back through the webpage. Okay, so public spaces and streets. So the big concept for White Rock is really defining streets as public spaces. So as you saw in the development framework, there were lots of number 4s all the way through the internal street network. So again, straightening Longview Drive was a big one, improving all of the conditions on the roadways, but really ensuring that there's, those strategies are not right. Creating street environments that are places where people want to be. So creating, landscaping, buffered sidewalks, putting in street furnishings, all of those types of things so that people have an enjoyable walking experience. The idea here is you want people to either drive and park and walk around or come in through other modes and just be able to walk through the town center. And then the idea of creating a diverse range of public spaces. So people were very enthusiastic about having some kind of central gathering space that was similar to Ashley Pond, obviously maybe not having a physical pond, but some kind of public space that could accommodate events for the community. And then this idea of allowing a range of spaces. So having a lot of patios for outdoor dining, creating kind of small parklets or mini plazas throughout and connecting all of those spaces together so that there's more of an open space network. And then really kind of enhancing the arroyo and the trail further as kind of a natural outlet for the town center. And then just some images of, the kind of big pieces. So creating these walkable, kind of livable streets where, you can have vending or outdoor cafes, creating cohesive street furniture, kind of those memorable pieces like the string lights. And then this idea of some kind of bigger public space component that, could be programmed in a variety of ways. And then anything to from plazas or the little parklets that you see on the very left here that could just take up a parking space in front of a building.
Okay.
So do we generally agree with these recommendations or are there things that people don't like?
Yes.
People like parks usually, that's
Yeah.
always a big one. Okay.
Oh,
No worries, we're
Yeah,
Becca,
Becca,
we
we'll-
got your response
get you
on the
later.
chat.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so and then the next one is similar to all the others. Is there anything that we've missed? And maybe let's skip the ranking because I think
Yeah.
they're fairly similar on this one. So is there anything we've missed in terms of public spaces? Is there some kind of public space amenity that you want to see that we didn't cover? Let us know here.
All right. Let's move on.
Okay. For the sake of time, we will just fly through the
And we
last
saw,
couple
Greg,
pieces
your
here.
comment about Pinion Park.
Yeah.
It's true. Yes.
Yes, or residents, that's the other piece, like the idea if downtown is more livable, then you probably also wanna create just more livable public spaces for residents. Let's move on, Kate. Okay, so the last 2, infrastructure and sustainability, I'm gonna try to go through these quickly, so. Basically, let's put all of these kind of major recommendations that the community is in agreement on the CIP and start to figure out ways to fund them. The idea of creating the TIF for some of those larger district-wide public infrastructure improvements, utility hookups at public spaces were something that came up in engagement. And then this idea of access to broadband. COVID obviously has shown us all how critical internet is. It's a big thing that we heard throughout the process. So planning for and kind of pursuing funding for broadband infrastructure, particularly within the town center, and then creating free Wi-Fi hotspots at major destinations, so public spaces and bus stops, for example. Let's just skip through the polling on the infrastructure, Kate, and go straight to sustainability. So we have 3 kind of major recommendations in terms of sustainability. This idea of requiring green infrastructure strategies. We're really looking at low impact development. So bioretention within sites through a variety of ways, allowing more pervious paving, and then really kind of encouraging more native landscaping. For example, this idea of incentivizing green parking lot practices, adding more solar parking covers, for example, or just having provisions in there to allow more electric charging stations, or even incentivizing those. And then pervious paving. Pervious paving is
That's
just a
porous. Porous is, yeah.
Yes. But the same idea, allowing water, allowing some kind of paving method that allows water to infiltrate rather than just asphalt that creates more contamination and those types of issues. And then updating the outdoor lighting regulations. We heard a lot about dark night skies being particularly important. So updating the zoning to ensure proper light fixtures that stop kind of light levels from trespassing to other properties, as well as the natural environment. So those are all of the recommendations for White Rock, and we're 1 minute over, so we did pretty good, but let's move on to.
And let's just open it up for White Rock for like, let's give it 5 minutes for people to unmute and just let us know what you think about what we've just presented.
Yeah. So Kate, we can't see if people are raising their hands, so you should have a raise your hand function. If you have comments for us, just raise your hand and then Kate can unmute people. And if not, then we'll move on. Yeah.
Catch your breath.
Yeah. That's all you know. I think it has come together very well. Thanks, David. I think people will probably have, Craig White.
All right.
Great.
Just real quick, I found out what I was doing wrong on the trying to move things around is
Oh, good.
you can't just hold the mouse and try to move it. You gotta tap it so that on the left there shows up an up and down button. That's what I wasn't seeing in the instructions.
Yeah. And thanks, Kate. So Kate brought back up the development kind of framework for White Rock. So these are the big kind of ideas that we've presented to you all tonight.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on and let's go to Los Alamos. So does anyone need a break?
Yeah.
I know there's a long meeting and we're packing a lot into this. All right, we're gonna soldier on here. So here's our vision for downtown Los Alamos. A downtown that is walkable with attractions for young and old, inspired by the unique history of Los Alamos, and a place where local businesses can thrive. And then these are kind of some of those goals that inform that vision statement. All right, let's move on. So the first question, is that appropriate? Is it an appropriate vision statement? It's shorter than White Rock, but we just distilled it down more. So not sure if people are just,
You know what, I think it might have, when I exited out of the presenting, it might have gone, it looks
Oh,
like
it's
the
not
poll
up.
isn't working, yeah. So let me, maybe we need to try from the beginning.
okay,
I hope that didn't mess anything up.
well. We'll figure out how to get people's input if we can't get that, so.
Okay. Bear with me, I'm just gonna flip through these to make sure we get to the right slide. Okay, I see it changing now in my
Yeah,
browser.
it's shifting. It seems like it'll.
Okay.
So for those of you that missed the beginning of the presentation, here is a very quick overview of everything you missed. Many strategies.
I know, and just by way of explanation, the structure of this downtown master plan that will be part of the comprehensive plan has these 8 elements, and so that's why we are going through these in this fashion, that we really want to make each of these elements relevant. All right, we're back in business.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that one might need a
that's-
little tweaking.
it's honest. Great. Moving on.
Okay, so for those of you that aren't sure or that don't agree, are there any things that need to be, any concepts that need to be in the vision that we didn't capture with that statement?
See if there are any chat.
Affordable supportive spaces.
Yeah. Okay. Hear that. Okay. Good comments. Thank you. So again, this is our central exhibit for downtown Los Alamos, and this was more challenging than White Rock. There's just more moving pieces in downtown Los Alamos. So part of this is walking through this. That one is that one real strong way to, effective way to change the dynamic of a downtown is to change the parking, because everybody pretty much drives, and parking is a central kind of way that we access places. So the general idea here is that we make it so that parking is more on a district-wide basis, so that you don't necessarily park right in front of that store you're going to, but you either park on the street, or you park in a lot, or you park in a structure that is in a short walking distance from your destination. So that just allows the type of buildings and the scale of buildings to be different than if everything is tied to the number of spaces that are needed on every single lot. So that's the driving force behind that recommendation there. And then, 2 is the redevelopment of the Merrimack Shopping Center, the biggest infill redevelopment site that is in Los Alamos now. And so we really want to make sure that that is done in a way that fits within the character of downtown Los Alamos and really helps to address the priorities like housing. 3 are bicycle improvements along Trinity and along Central and the cross streets. 4 is about creating more of urban character and reinforcing the identity of downtown Los Alamos. 5, creating this public space near Central Park Square or within Central Park Square, and understanding the constraints of that and the ownership. But there's some great things happening there, and just building on those successes. And along with that, a pedestrian corridor that would connect the Central Park Square across Central Avenue and down to Trinity. So something that could create another destination and open up new options for restaurants and retail along that. And 7, some street extensions to break up large blocks on the south side of Trinity there, as well as between Central and Trinity. So that's the big picture of the downtown master plan. So are there any concepts that or ideas that need to be reflected in the vision and in this master plan? I think our polling is trying to catch up with our presentation.
I think it's just labeled wrong. It's supposed to be development framework.
Okay, so it's really meant to say, is there something in that framework that we had that we didn't capture? Yes, the P's are a parking garage. And the idea was to designate a couple places. That's a great question. Part of the parking is, and I think the carbon neutral goal is really something that has helped drive some of these strategies. So, electric cars need parking spaces too. We're not trying to encourage more parking, actually encouraging less in terms of driving, but with mobility issues, that's another great question. Every business will still have ADA accessible parking in front. So, and there will be ADA accessible parking within the parking structures as well. Dealing with elevation change with the through streets.
We will address that, and there's some options in the presentation. So we will talk about office spaces.
Yeah, to move lab type office spaces out of these spaces where you're hoping to see businesses. And this is not a mandate. This is more of a large policy document. So I think that it's more of the carrot rather than the stick in terms of the strategies that we're proposing. So, but there are some recommendations that are being considered now in terms of addressing that office space on ground floors. So let's go to our character sketches. Is Central Park recommended main downtown gathering space versus Central Avenue? It's not either or, it's both. Pedestrian walkway from Central Trinity where you have it is not possible. There would be, and part of this has to do with the building that the city was, that the council was considering purchasing. So yes, there is some, we understand that, there's some modifications that would have to happen to some of the existing structures. Yes.
And property, I showed this the other one that came.
Yeah. So we will, and maybe we can have a more in-depth discussion about that toward the end, right? And I understand they turned down buying the building, so this is why we're having these sessions. And again, the vision is not necessarily what's possible today, but what's possible in the next decade or two. So we're looking not just at what can happen, but looking at longer term potential. So here's a concept for Merrimack, showing buildings going to the fronting the street at a scale that fits within the downtown area, street trees, architecture, and again, these are, we did not design this building. This is a character sketch meant to convey an overall impression. So, so where you really have great pedestrian environments and also a more urban character for downtown Los Alamos. And then our next one is extension of 20th Street and redevelopment there. So that would be south of Trinity, correct?
It's between Trinity and Central.
Between, yeah.
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 The next one's the pedestrian corridor.
And then this next one is what that pedestrian corridor could look like. And it doesn't have to be that wide, and not talking about 100-foot wide space. It's more in the range of about 40 to 60 feet. So just a space that can be a different kind of vibe for Los Alamos. And again, I know that there are constraints to this, but the idea is to put an idea out in the public realm and see if this is something that's compatible with overall downtown development. All right. And the last one, this plaza. Something that just creates another gathering space in downtown area. And then, so this is the recommendation for the zoning. That we really want to see if we can increase the range of commercial, retail, entertainment, and urban housing that's built in the downtown area. And part of that is to allow higher building heights, and then while also creating neighborhoods protection standards, so that it's the heights are in the places where they're appropriate, and they're also lower where it is appropriate next to established neighborhoods. So we have a couple building height alternatives. And one is, so this is just sort of generally, we're just stepping back here and looking at the overall strategy, because what happens a lot of times is that it becomes all about building heights. And I personally am more of a believe that if it's not the height, it's what is actually being built. And if it's a good design and it's in the right place and it's done well, it feels right. And if it's done poorly, it doesn't work, whether the height is 20 feet or 50 feet. So these two options are the second one's the easy one. You say, let's let the market decide. We're not going to cap building height. There's a sort of a calculation in terms of land prices, market demand, and the local economy that will drive the height of a building. So that's one option. And the other option is to say, we're going to cap the heights with an agreed upon number of stories. And that's more the traditional zoning approach. And then create a few incentives that allow for higher heights if certain standards are met. What goes into a landscape buffer? Well,
Vegetative screen.
yeah, landscape, I mean, it's generally either depending on what it's intended to do, but it can be trees, it can be shrubs, but it generally has a certain minimum amount of coverage. And then depending on the situation, it either calls for something like street trees or more ground cover. So that's that landscape buffer there, yes. They have all different building heights, okay? Understood?
Next one, actually, which they prefer.
Okay, so let's go to the polling question. I'd like to see less concrete, more trees. I agree. So this is a very basic question. All right,
It's pretty clear.
Yep. That's why we have meetings.
Yeah.
That's why we like to get feedback. I will say the trend in zoning is that there's more allowance for letting the market decide in terms of building heights. But I totally understand that and that perspective. Yeah.
So impacting views, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
all right. Moving on. I'm gonna turn it over to Kate.
Thanks, Will. So I think a lot of these recommendations are very similar to the White Rock ones, so I'm not going to go into as much detail as Jessica, and then it's already 6:50, so that should leave us some time at the end to open it up for discussion before we end at 8:30. So we'll start with the urban form and identity. So these are going to be the same topics as were covered in the White Rock. And below is the recommendation with a few strategies that go along with it. So the first one, increase, enhance pedestrian-oriented infrastructure. And that includes what has been done on Central Avenue. We know that there's a really good established streetscape there. So we would like to make sure that it's put into the east, to the east of Central Avenue along that road, and then also in the other roadways as well, so that we can kind of see a whole matching style to Central Avenue. Then along with this is the north-south pedestrian corridor that we've discussed, and then as well updating zoning to require the on-site pedestrian pathways, and that will better provide for pedestrian access, especially considering that we are suggesting doing a parking district, which makes people walk more around the city. So having these on-site pedestrian pathways is going to help people to move around more. So these are the same for White Rock with the recommendations. There's a signature gateway feature that we're recommending installing when you enter downtown on the east side, and then as well when you enter downtown on the west side at Trinity and Oppenheimer. And these are just a treatment. It can be landscape, it can be public art, it can be monumentation that just shows that you are arriving downtown, and it helps with placemaking as well. And then as well, the branded wayfinding signage, seek funding for implementation of this system. The placemaking strategies is with the gateway feature. We're also recommending expanding that streetscape improvement downtown to the remainder of the corridor, like I mentioned before, and then as well increasing festive and memorable placemaking elements throughout the downtown district. So that's going to be the lights, the string lights across the street, memorable seating elements, anything that makes it unique. And then finally, the rebrand downtown as family-friendly environment. So that means including multi-generational programming within the existing spaces downtown, and then as well adding entertainment venues and hangout locations for youth and families. So again, here's some examples of the signature gateway features on the top. They could be an arch over the roadway, they could be sculpture, a sign with a map on it, and even some streetscape, street pavement treatments. The wide sidewalks for a more memorable placemaking feature, and then some interesting seating elements, and the string lights across the street. So go ahead and rank the strategies that you just saw. There's updating downtown zoning, increase, enhance pedestrian-oriented infrastructure, install signature gateway features, implement a branded wayfinding signage system, incorporate placemaking strategies, and rebrand as a family-friendly environment. Downtown zoning, number one, that
Yeah,
reflects what we've heard for sure.
well, not so much anymore.
It's still high though, and the
Yeah.
family friendly one is actually really high too.
Yeah, that's great.
What are the specifics about the multi-generational?
Oh yeah, okay, so there's a question about what are the specifics about multi-generational recommendations. So there were some recommendations for indoor entertainment venues, in particular, some things for the youth, like bowling alleys or arcades. There was something about pop-up, right? The pop-up food
Mhm.
amenities, and really kind of catering to families and the youth in terms of convenient and kind of fast grab and go types of items. I think those are the two major ones that come to mind.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
So then this is the question, if we missed anything, go ahead and plug it in here.
So we got a comment about kind of creating more natural landscape forms rather than everything in straight controlled lines, so we can
Mhm.
look at that. Also,
Not
outdoor
bright plastic, yeah.
yeah,
Food truck pavilion with permanent infrastructure for that. Great suggestion.
Mhm.
okay.
You know, I think we have to figure out where's a good location for that.
Food trucks.
Yeah. Somewhere Ashley Pond, I think.
The gateway features are lower out of the option presented. Got it.
Yeah,
Food trucks in the lot
between
between
Sonic and the
and
natural grocers, okay?
okay, why don't we move on, Kate?
Yeah,
Wayfinding is under. Yes, I think the recommendation in the plan, we are aware that wayfinding is out there, so we'll make sure we address that properly.
yeah.
Bike rentals.
Bike rentals are great, and you know, it is interesting though, Albuquerque had bike share program, but they did not. They pulled out, so it's challenging to create one in a town the size of Los Alamos, but it's possible.
All right,
Right.
so
I would
the next
skip-
element is housing. So the recommendations we have for those allow increased multifamily densities and heights. We're recommending to update zoning to allow vertical mixed use and multifamily development up to 7 stories. And so this would be the option 1 that we discussed earlier, where we cap the building heights at a certain height, and for 7 stories, the design and construction.
And can I just
would-
jump in, Kate?
Sure.
I think we're actually looking to increase that now, so. I think that we are looking to go even a little higher than that, so. I would just tell people, caution people that that 7 is not, it could be up to 9 or 10 stories. So,
If you have an opinion about what the appropriate height is, let us know.
yeah,
Please. Okay, thanks, Will.
all
So
right,
then update the zoning to include neighborhood protection standards as well. And that would be the diagram we showed earlier about requiring building height step backs and landscape buffers at the periphery where the the low density residential is, and that's mostly to the north of the downtown boundaries. And then secondly, allow us a greater mix of housing type within downtown. So making sure that the zoning allows for a range of housing types, and that includes townhouses, multifamily, mixed use, anything in between, so that you get a good mixture of places where people can live according to what they can afford and what they would like to live in. So do you generally agree with the recommendations for housing?
This is for Los Alamos, not for White Rock.
Oh, yes. This is for this is for Los Alamos.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming the no's are probably because of building height, but if you answered no, please let us know in the chat.
No more than 2 stories. Well, right now you can build up to 7 stories, so you know it's
Well, it's 60 feet.
yeah,
And it's actually 75.
with a parking.
With,
yeah,
or a certain percentage of affordable housing or housing.
yeah.
So there's one question, why would you recommend 4 stories for White Rock and 7 for downtown? And this is talking about population density. Los Alamos is the town side is a bigger population center and a bigger downtown area. And so it would accommodate more density, therefore more building height.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next. And you know, we know that this is an issue that elicits a strong opinion. So and we understand views are important, and this is not to say that you will never be able to see the mountains. So and if we are going to address the housing crisis in the county, the downtown is the prime place to do that. So
Let's skip this one, Kate, for whatever reason. This is just bringing up the White Rock.
yeah.
Okay, so transportation, implement safe pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. So we are recommending making a minimum of an 8-foot wide sidewalk where feasible. This just allows for more pedestrian movement across downtown. People can just move about more freely when sidewalks are wider. So this also involves constructing safe pedestrian and bicycle crossing facilities, particularly across Trinity Drive, where it's lacking right now. Add pedestrian amenities, including street trees and understory landscaping, lighting, signage, site furnishings, all these things that they have an established presence on Central Avenue right now, but just expanding those amenities throughout downtown. Prioritizing funding of bicycle facilities within downtown in the capital improvement plan, and then requiring new developments to provide a minimum number of bike parking as well. Right now in the code, there's no requirement for bike parking. So just allowing, making a provision for bike parking will make it more of a friendly place to bike around. So you can park places and then walk around the district. And then improving vehicular access and connectivity. This has to do with the extension of 6th Street and 9th Street to Trinity Drive. And that is going to be in the eastern part near Merrimack, and that's part of that redevelopment. Making sure that the large blocks are broken down into smaller blocks with these streets is a large part of increasing walkability downtown. Expanding convenient access to transit as downtown intensifies. So adapting transit service routes as downtown densifies, and making sure that there's enough service and routes to serve everybody that is locating downtown. And of course, enhancing the bus stops with new shelters and pedestrian amenities, such as the real-time signage and the Wi-Fi hotspots. And then the last one, improve the parking management strategy. So that involves promoting a Park One strategy that is creating a centralized parking structures. You go there, you park, and you walk, you bike, you take transit around the rest of downtown. Eliminating minimum off-street parking standards and updating design standards to tuck parking behind or to the side of buildings, so that when you are traveling down a road, you're not just seeing parking and then buildings after that. The buildings are right up against the road, which allows for better walkability and a pedestrian-oriented environment. So do you generally agree with the downtown Los Alamos recommendations for the transportation element?
Okay, so far there seems to be consensus. Okay, Kate, we've got 25 minutes, so maybe we.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we skip this then?
Yeah, let's skip this. Let's skip this.
So the next category is the economic vitality. That's a vibrant downtown with an environment in which local businesses can thrive. A few of these also reflect what we have recommended in White Rock. So to streamline the development process within the downtown, this is the allowing administrative approvals for projects of a certain size that meet all development standards. The development strategies that incentivize redevelopment or vacant parcels. Jessica discussed the vacant building ordinance, as well as updating zoning to allow greater range of uses for long-term vacant buildings. Then developing strategies to keep commercial rents affordable. That's the lease to own or buy your building programs. The incentives as well for small businesses through property tax credits. So I'm just moving quickly through these because we did discuss them already.
Yeah.
Should we skip this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we skipped that before.
So going back to it because it's mad that we skipped it.
Yeah, the polling is doing some interesting things.
And then this went back to transportation.
No, I'd say just keep
Going
going.
through where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It like jumped back, it seems like.
Okay, there we go. I knew there was a few more. I was like, where did we go? So allow uses that support small businesses. That is to make sure that we're encouraging the small business environment. This would be for mobile vending, micro retail, and startup spaces. So as to give businesses a smaller space to start, and then grow into a larger space. And then promoting indoor entertainment venues, allow and promote family-friendly entertainment venues like bowling alleys, laser tag, arcades, etc. The micro retail, you can see again on the top, these are just small, usually 250 to 500 square foot spaces. And then startup incubator spaces in the middle row. These can be co-working spaces for retail, startups, incubator kitchens, food halls, and then mobile vending. You're going to see kiosks or actual trucks, or you can have little bike carts like the bottom right.
Okay.
So do you generally agree with the downtown Los Alamos recommendations for the economic vitality?
Okay.
I'll move on. It looks like 80% yes, 20% not sure. And just go ahead and use the chat function to make your voice heard.
Sense.
Skip that. So we can do this question. What other downtown economic vitality related strategies, if any, would you like to see?
Okay.
Okay.
Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
So public space and street, create diverse, interconnected public spaces. This involves linking the public spaces that already exist and creating new ones. There can be a diverse variety of these public spaces. They could be different sizes. So you have anything from a large plaza to a parklet, which is the size of a parking space, and anything in between. And then through the pedestrian oriented infrastructure that we talked about earlier, these public spaces would be linked. The county should plan and seek funding for larger, more centralized public spaces like a plaza, and then updating the development code to include incentives like building height bonuses that would incentivize developers to create public spaces on their land that would connect to the pedestrian realm and have enhanced sidewalk amenities. And then as well, this touches on the pedestrian corridor. Someone commented earlier that it's not possible, and it's because this is on private property currently. And so we would recommend creating and incentivizing this corridor so that businesses can orient towards it, and they can have outdoor dining and retail spaces. And also that the buildings could have height bonuses for property owners when they implement the segments of the pedestrian corridors on their private property, and they can create we can create standards for such corridors with the zoning update. Then define streets as public space. So this is implementing streetscape designs that emulate the improved portions of Central Avenue along other downtown streets. Include the funding of streetscape improvements that emulate the improved portions of Central Avenue in the capital improvement program. And then increase sidewalk widths in downtown to a minimum of 8 feet, and or incentivize property owners to dedicate additional right-of-way as appropriate or feasible. So a few images. These are central plazas, and on the right you can see a parklet, which is a small space just on the edge of the sidewalk that extends the sidewalk for more outdoor dining. And then at the bottom is the idea of the pedestrian corridor with string lights and benches, and you can even host special events where you block off the corridor and set up tables. So do you generally agree with the Downtown Los Alamos recommendations for the public space street element?
And while we're waiting for people to respond to this, you know, the state in the last legislative session broadened the incentives on the Local Economic Development Act, LEDA funding. And so there's some new provisions for retail that we're going to look at that we think could be applicable to the downtown areas. So Kate, let's really breeze through the last components so that we can have a little more time for comment here at the end. So I don't think we have to go through all of them. I think that these are, we know that Wi-Fi is really important. We heard that loud and clear, and the idea of public utility hookups at public spaces is something that we heard and that we incorporated into this. Yeah, and a lot of the infrastructure has to do with green infrastructure strategies and really trying to make the downtown areas reduce their carbon footprint in terms of lighting, in terms of solar, and in terms of landscape as well for green infrastructure. So let's, I think we're almost through. I think that might be our last one. Yeah, and these are some of the images you've seen before. So, so next steps are really to get your input and to bring this master plan to council for adoption. So we think that we're fairly far along. We know that there are some strong opinions about the density and height. So we're looking forward to having that discussion. And I just want to open it up to hear what people want to say about Los Alamos and even about White Rock. So I would say, and we're having great, I'm really happy, really pleased to see all the dialogue in the chat function. It's really informative. So if anyone wants to say anything through their actual microphones, feel free to unmute. And Greg's got his hand. Okay, Greg.
Overall, for both White Rock and in downtown, it sounds like a pretty good overall plan in terms of there's still some wiggle room for adapting to things that happen in the future. So I think both these plans in general are very good plans. Now, some things, like some of us have mentioned in the chat, are going to be things you need, you and the rest of us need to convince the council of their importance, as well as take into consideration the amount of taxpayer dollars that would need to be used for things like, as mentioned, new fire trucks, new fire equipment and things to deal with places that are either too tall for the current equipment or inaccessible to fire vehicles if it's only a pedestrian walkway and that kind of stuff. I mean, there are workarounds to these things. Perfect example is Main Street in downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. Completely closed off to traffic and everything, but there's workarounds the fire department has to ensure that the safety of the people in the buildings and stuff. So things in this plan are very workable, which is why I think that overall both plans are very good.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to speak up? And I do appreciate all of you that have stuck around. I'm very grateful for that. So I know there's a lot of things to do on a Thursday night, and maybe your downtown master plan is not at the top of the list, but we really value your input here. So
Will, I'll check in and just say, the process that this has gone through is really impressive. And I think what you're showing here tonight are two really actionable plans that are within the scope of what can actually be done. And I think people get excited about that. I really hope so anyway.
Thank you, David. And you've been a really great contributor throughout this past year. And I know that your commitment to creating better Los Alamos is really there. So thank you.
Well, that's good for my business, I'll tell you that.
And this is not the idea is to really put forth a plan that is actionable and that has that can align with market forces, but also push the boundary a little bit in terms of what is possible. So hopefully we're striking that right balance. The last master plan for the downtown Los Alamos that did not get adopted had some really great concepts in it, but I think maybe pushed the boundary a little too far, and as a result didn't really get implemented. I want to see these projects come to life, and I think you do too. So that's really the idea, and to get this to really come to life in the next 5 to 10 years. So not hearing any other people, I just like to wrap up and say, Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
And you're muted, Greg.
Just out of curiosity, and I mentioned, a bit earlier, Sedona, Arizona used to be a really great place to go visit, and had a great downtown with the shops and the restaurants and stuff. And in a lot of ways, it still is. But the lack of parking just has really kind of, I don't know what happened. I mean, from my remembering from like 15 years ago to now, I remember there being a lot more parking 15 years ago. I don't know if either of you have ever been to Sedona, but
Yes.
the amount of tourists that they get.
Oh yeah.
And they're nowhere near as beautiful a scenery as we have. I think is something that we should shoot for.
What was that? Casey Stengel line? Nobody goes there anymore. It's so crowded. So it's a little bit like that, I think. So
yeah, and I think they just somewhere along the way, I think they just ended up like maybe ripping out too much parking to make room for more stores and restaurants or something, and it went from being a nice kind of open, leisurely downtown to just being, packed like being on a subway train.
yeah. Well, hopefully we're moving toward that right balance of allowing densification, but still making it so that you can get around here. So, and as Paul said in the chat box, we are planning to be before County Council in early June. I believe it's June 7th. So please join that discussion. I think that might even be in person, so we won't all be just staring at a screen. June 8th, yes. And I'd say with that, let's call it a meeting. Appreciate everyone. And
Hey, Well,
yeah,
I think Dorothy had a comment. She was raising her hand.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see that. Go ahead. Hi, Dorothy.
Boundaries. I think one boundary that would be important to consider is that many of us who already live here really like living in a small mountain town. And I know we talk about housing crisis. We can look like New York City and still not have enough housing. So I don't think that is a good reason to destroy the mountain town atmosphere that we live here for.
Okay. And I know that I hear you. Thank you.
Kate, maybe you can just bring up the last, the slide that has the webpage on it. So we do, the draft of these plans are available on the project website. So that's losalamosconnect.org, and that little yellow box down there. So that's the homepage. Under the downtown master plans there, you'll find the links to the plans so you can download them and take a look at the actual document. There's a lot more text, obviously, but you can really dive into those recommendations if you feel the need to.
Yeah. And I just want to thank Kate and Jessica have been working really hard on these master plans, and it's an incredible effort to get it to this point. So kudos to the team. Thank you. All right. Well, with that, hope everyone has a good evening, and we hope to see you soon. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.